Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. Time for the Monday show with Andrew Musgrove and Aaron Stokes. Another week gone and another 7 days without a signing as the season draws ever closer. With the lads now out in Japan, will we see, just like we did with Alan Shearer, a big money arrival join up with his new Newcastle United teammates in the Far East? We'll discuss the win over Hull City, the potential second, or is it fourth chance of a certain United left back, the future of a couple of youngsters who some may have expected to join up with the squad in Japan. Plus, we'll answer your questions as well. We hope you guys are doing well. Give the video a thumbs up. Hit subscribe as well, please. If you're listening later on the audio feed, thank you as always. Do get in touch as well by sending an email to the eibwpodcast@reachplc.com. Let's get on with the show. Aaron, how you doing? A weekend of work? You'll be looking forward to a day off or two.
I am, yes, but thankfully the day of work consisted of watching Newcastle United win. Very good to see them back in action. I didn't realise how much I'd missed it until I saw Alexander Isak scoring early on against Hull. So yeah, all good. How about yourself?
I'm fuming.
Okay.
Because it appears that the Everything is Black and White podcast mug, of which I only know of two in existence, one my father-in-law has and one was here in this office, has gone missing. It's either been smashed, stolen, maybe misplaced, but I'm fizzing.
I've got a feeling that it's tucked away in my desk.
Why would it be in your job?
But I can't confirm that. But I just got a feeling I've got a couple of mugs.
Been using it on the sly?
No, but I feel like you might have given it to me last week, so I'll check that after the pod. But hopefully it doesn't derail from what we're about to talk about. And hopefully you can get, actually, before we move on actually to the important stuff, have you got your wedding ring on this week?
I found it, ladies and gents. I found it. I'm glad that the video that I put out on Twitter cheered everyone up. Loads of people were very happy and amused by me thinking I'd lost my wedding ring. I essentially put it in the car when I play Monday Night Football because my mum always told me a story about a non-league goalkeeper. I don't even know how she heard of this story, but a non-league goalkeeper who went to save the ball and ended up getting his finger caught on the net and damaged his hand, essentially. I'm not going into the gory details, but that's why I never ever play with my wedding ring on Monday Night Football.
Well, if anybody hasn't seen the video and you don't know what I'm on about, please go on our social channels and find it, because Andrew has a fantastic moment where he's talking to John Gibson where he just completely zones out from Gibbo's expert analysis because he notices that he's lost his ring. Honestly, I've watched it about 5 times. It's so funny.
I'm glad I'm here for your amusement. I did find it. The fear was real. I could hear in my head what my wife was going to say about where this wedding ring was, but thankfully it was where I expected it to be. And I had a lovely weekend. I didn't see the whole game, so I'm going to ask you to sum it up for me in a moment. But I was, in North Yorkshire, went to Fountains Abbey, lovely National Trust property. If you haven't been, get yourselves down there and spent the weekend nice property with a hot tub and everything.
And you said you were hating your life.
I hate hot tubs.
Oh, really?
I'm a
fan of a good hot tub.
My wife always wants it. When you tick the preference box, has to have a hot tub. But for me, I can spend 10 minutes and then I'm like, no, I'm cramping up. My knees are gone. I have to get out. I'd rather walk the hills of North Yorkshire, the Lake District. I'm not a hot tub kind of guy. But yeah, lovely weekend while you were busy working. No parkrun this weekend for yourself?
No parkrun, but a nice 8K on Saturday night. Dragged myself out the house. First run for me since before my holiday, which was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. That Great North Run is creeping ever closer, isn't it? 6 weeks now, less than 6 weeks.
The first post-holiday run is always a difficult one, isn't it?
It was a tough one, but glad I did it.
Yeah, it's coming up, the Great North Run. I think we're both running for certain charities, and we'll pop the link to Just Giving pages in the comments later in the week or so. But let's get on to the football. And actually, before we get on to Newcastle versus Hull, Aaron, you're back as well tonight for Monday Night Football.
Yeah,
it's all happening.
Hopefully not too stiff. Hopefully haven't lost any of the magic since the last time I played.
You play once every month.
Exactly, yeah. So
for reasons I can only imagine. Anyway, we'll start with a brief recap of Saturday's victory over Hull City. 2-0 win with goals from Alexander Isak and Jacob Murphy. And as I said there, I only saw the highlights. So tell me what I missed.
Look, it was a very comfortable Newcastle United win for anybody who didn't see it. 2 nice early goals from them in the first half, and after that, it had very much the feel of a pre-season friendly. Howe gave a lot of minutes to some youngsters in the second half. We also saw Jamie Miley from the start. We saw a few tactical tweaks. We saw Lewis Hall really impressive in central midfield, and there was I know we're going to talk about it, but there was maybe a late lifeline for a certain fringe star in Jamal Lewis, who looked who looked very sharp at left back.
Well, we're going to go into detail about quite a few of those points. I want to start with Lewis Hall and pressing in the centre of midfield. Is this an experiment with a view to something more permanent, or is it just needs must in a pre-season friendly?
Look, I think it's pre-season. You've got to take every formation, every setup, every system, every tactic with a gigantic pinch of salt. But that being said, it'll be very interesting this week to see whether he uses Lewis Hall in that position in any of the Japan games, whether he opts for it in the Salah Cup later next month. And look, on the face of it, I don't think Lewis Hall is going to be Newcastle United's defensive midfielder this summer. But you can't knock the fact he had a fantastic game there. You can't knock the fact that he's came out on the record and said it's his favourite position to play. He played there a lot for Chelsea when he was younger. He was very, very good. I thought he was probably second to get man of the match behind Jacob Murphy on Saturday. Very, very impressive. He looked very good in that position. So confident and comfortable on the ball.
So much so that it might turn Eddie Howe's head?
Yeah, potentially. Look, I mean, we don't really know what's going to happen with the midfield this summer. Is it going to work with Tonali, Bruno, Joel? And are we going to be able to keep them all fit and firing once Tonali's back? But look, it's certainly a very good option to have, the fact that Lewis Hall can play our left back. He can play in centre defence midfield. There was actually times during the first half that Newcastle were sort of changing their formation, whether they had the ball or not, and they were dropping into a back three where Hall was essentially becoming a centre back with Byrne and Kraft, and Lewis and Livramento were essentially moving up to being wing backs. So it was a very, very versatile performance. So yeah, very, very positive. But early days, we don't know whether it's going to be a permanent feature.
One to watch. We've got Alexander Isak grabbing another goal.
Yeah,
I can't wait to see him back competitively for Newcastle United. He's looking very, very sharp.
Yeah, again, look, it's pre-season. It's against Hull. You know, it is essentially a game where anything can happen. But he looks very rested. He looks very sharp. I think not being at the Euros with Sweden will do him a world of good. He's had a lot of time to just sit back, relax after a heavy season, after those groin injuries that he just couldn't shake last year. And in the game, the one game that we've seen that hasn't been behind closed doors, he looked very, very good. Hungry for chances in behind. Him and Jacob Murphy look like they've struck up a real connection over the last couple of months. And his goal was a real typical striker's finish. Got in front of the goalkeeper, beat the man at the near post, and slotted it in. So look, long may it continue. He looks like he's really benefited from just a couple of months off the pitch.
Nick Pope as well. How Newcastle suffered without him last season, makes a great save. I think you could probably see a world-class save from Regan Slater. Right decision not to spend 40, 50 million, maybe even more on another goalkeeper this summer?
Look, I think yes. I think if Newcastle had gone out and spent big money on a goalkeeper, I don't think too many people would have, grumbled that Nick Pope was dropping down to second choice. But saying that, I think, as we consistently mention, where their priorities lie this summer, goalkeeper isn't really a priority. I think even more so now they've went out and signed John Ruddy and Vlachodimos. And Pope's came back and he looks fighting fit. He looks sharp. Any sort of minor concerns that we might have had in the last couple of months of, is this shoulder injury going to sort of wreak havoc with him further down the line? So far, so good. And again, even though it's the first time we've seen him this season, he again looked very sharp. That save was fantastic. Looks even better when you see it back on the replays. And he never really looked like conceding on Saturday.
He's probably got a point to prove as well, because he'll not be naive to all the comments on social media. As much as footballers say we don't look at them, someone somewhere in their camp does look at them and probably will tell them every now and then that there was speculation about his future. People saying Newcastle need an upgrade, and as much as they try not to get bothered by it, it will get into their heads. He will have a point to prove, I think, in the season to come, and say, well, I'm Newcastle's number one for a reason. You don't need to go and upgrade on me because there's no one better out there.
Yeah, absolutely. In the last couple of months or weeks even, he'll have looked at that speculation about James Trafford coming in. He'll have looked at that speculation about Mamadashvili from Valencia, and he'll be thinking, okay, I need to step my game up here. My place in this team isn't guaranteed. Obviously, the way that events have transpired since, it probably does look like he is going to be the number one, which is the right decision. But it's also about the longevity now for Nick Pope. He's not getting any younger. He might be thinking, this might be my last season as Newcastle United's number one. He needs to stay in the good books. And there might also be a little bit in the back of his head thinking there's a New England manager coming in and it's my chance to maybe get back into the fold for one last tournament. So yeah, autoplay for, but the signs so far are really good from Nick Pope.
I just hope that Lacademos and John Ruddy can actually push him for that place as Newcastle's number one, and they're not just there to kind of fill a gap during the week and push him just in training. I really do hope that there's actual fierce competition for this spot, because at his age, you know, if he's just guaranteed a number one spot, you'll digress. I mean, you'll revert, you'll fall from your perch kind of thing.
Look, I think no Nick Pope's personality, I don't think he will rest on his laurels because of the standard of goalkeeper behind him. I think he will probably look at Vlachodimos and say, if the Vlachodimos that was at Benfica turns up, I'm probably, in a little bit of trouble for my position here. There's also, the slight, maybe minor chance that Newcastle actually go out and sign another goalkeeper, because, well, potentially there's still grumblings that, or rumblings that they might still be in for James Trafford. There's also rumblings I've seen over the weekend that Blackburn are potentially looking to loan John Ruddy, which I can't really understand. And, those are just reports at the moment. But, I don't think that door's fully closed yet. I think Howe wants to see how Vlachodimos does. He's only played he played the second half in Germany last week. He played the last 15 or so on Saturday and made one good save. I think Howe will want to see whether he is up to the standard of being a number two. And of course, we're forgetting Martin Dubravka because we all just assume that he is out the door, which I think he will be. Our colleague Lee Ryder was reporting that even Arsenal might be considering a move for him if they move Ramsdale on. I think, if I was to place a bet right now, I think Dubravka's out on his way out, and I think it would be Vlachodimos as number two at Pope. But it could all still change in the next couple of weeks.
Certainly can. I meant to say the word regress there. That's the word I was looking for. Couldn't quite get off the tip of my tongue. Let's talk about Jamal Lewis. Involved again, 74 minutes, getting time on the pitch. Looked decent enough. He's got to Japan with the squad. Are we seeing him getting another chance to prove himself at Newcastle United under a manager who's done it before with other players? Or are we seeing him just get a platform to put himself in the window for a move?
Look, I think it's the latter, and I want to read a comment here that we've just had in from Harmeet Singh. He says, why are players like Jamal Lewis in this squad when we need to be getting rid? It just shows how he's going to use him as backup. Now, I tweeted on Saturday during the game that Jamal Lewis was actually looking quite sharp, and I had a lot of replies saying he's championship standard, move him out, he shouldn't be anywhere near that team. Now, look, I'm not saying I completely disagree with that. From what we've seen so far of Jamal Lewis, he hasn't been up to the standard. He struggled on loan at Watford. He hasn't taken the chances that Eddie Howe has given him. But you cannot say that Eddie Howe is not giving him every chance, because every summer he comes back and he's straight back into that team. And it feels like Eddie Howe's just sat there thinking, this is the summer. Come on, Jamal. This is the summer that you prove what we all saw when you were at Norwich. This is why Liverpool wanted you. This is why Newcastle paid all that money for you. Now, if I was a better man, I think Jamal Lewis goes. But I remember watching Jamal Lewis when Newcastle beat Gateshead 3-2 this time last summer at the Gateshead Stadium. And Jamal Lewis was absolutely terrible. He was playing left wing. He looked off the pace. You thought, right, he's going to be out the door soon. The Jamal Lewis, and again, massive pinch of salt, the Jamal Lewis that we saw on Saturday looked sharp. He looked like he's fitting into the system. And all I'm going to say on it is Eddie Howe has clearly given him the opportunity to impress. And
you think that's what it is?
I think
he's not being kind and saying, look, you need to go this summer, get yourself in the shop window.
No, because, well, he's probably thinking of it both ways. He's thinking, look, if Jamal Lewis has a really good preseason, is there a way that I can squeeze him at my 25? Now, we haven't actually talked about this on the podcast, but he's taken 29 to Japan. A lot of those are youngsters. But actually, when you look at the players that have missed out on Japan, like Matt Targett and players like that, he's going to have to cut a good few of these squads. So Jamal Lewis is fighting for his place. And if it doesn't work out, then look, there might be a team, in the offing ready to give him a loan or ready to sign him permanently further down the chain.
We did have someone there saying that he's a championship player and looked decent against the championship side.
Yeah.
But he is only 26. And Eddie Howe, you look at Joe Linton, you look at Jacob Murphy, and you think he's turned them into really good players, Joe Linton especially. And I'm willing to bet that a lot of people who jumped on the back of your comment on Saturday about Lewis probably were the ones jumping on Joe Linton's back and saying he's a Premier League flop. And look, they're totally different players, totally different pools of talent. But if we're being overly optimistic and overly positive, Eddie Howe has a history of turning the careers around of players who are deemed worthless.
And he clearly likes Lewis. He clearly likes Jamal Lewis, because he gave him a chance last summer, and obviously it didn't work out. He didn't play very well. He went to Watford on loan. He's given him a lot of chances this summer. He started last week in Germany in that behind closed doors game. He started on Saturday. We haven't seen players like Harrison Ashby yet this summer. We haven't seen the likes of Grant Kowal. We haven't seen these other fringe players who we thought might get a chance. He's given Jamal Lewis the opportunity. Now, as I say, please don't come for me. I'm not advocating that Jamal Lewis is Newcastle United's first choice left back against Southampton next month. All I'm saying is he looked very good on Saturday. Yes, it's a pre-season game. It's against Hull. But it'll be very interesting to see how he does on this week in Japan, and it'll be very interesting to see whether he's at the club next month. As I say, I think, if you're asking me right now to make a prediction, I think he goes. But I think Howe is hoping that he just gets him going.
He's got that opportunity and he has to seize it. Unfortunately for him, his time at Watford last season, where he clocked up 36 appearances, didn't appear to go too well. I've just read one Watford pundit described Lewis's time at Vicarage Road as one of the worst loan signings Watford has ever made. He didn't get forward enough, he didn't cross the ball enough, and he didn't particularly look all that interested.
Yeah, and Watford had the opportunity to sign him permanently this summer and they turned it down. So that is where he's been at in the past. Now, it would be a huge turnaround if he can somehow find his way into Newcastle's 25-man squad, and that's why I think it's so unlikely. So yeah, big couple of weeks for him.
Well, it's interesting we're talking about a left back, because I think a lot of people by now would have loved to have seen or loved to have heard of Lloyd Kelly being more involved this pre-season. He hasn't appeared in any of the 3 games so far. Wasn't involved against Hull City. He's gone with the squad to Germany. He's gone with the squad to Japan, but yet to kick a ball in these pre-season friendlies. Now, people know what camp I'm in when it comes to his sign. I think he's going to be absolutely brilliant, but there are quite a few who raise his injury record as a concern, and not featuring in any of the games so far this summer. Not going to do much to dampen those concerns, is it?
Yeah, well, Eddie Howe was asked about Kelly after Saturday's win at Hull, and he said, with Lloyd, it's just a case of building his training load because we train differently, which is absolutely correct. There are differences and emotional feelings when you join a new club, and you should probably give players a little bit longer to expose them to the really hard yards that we'll do in pre-season and that they need to do for the new season. Everyone wants to see him. I want to see him, but we've got to manage that process right. Now, if you're taking those quotes on face value, we're saying Eddie Howe's just trying to, slowly bed Lloyd Kelly in. He's trying to get him up to speed. Maybe the more cynical people, and I feel like you maybe fall into this camp, or maybe thinking, is Lloyd Kelly already injured? And Eddie Howe doesn't want to say so. Now, Lloyd Kelly's been taken to Japan. Now, I think that's a good sign. We will probably see him this week, but he's also taken Sandro Tonali, who we know we won't see this week. So is it a case of he's taking Lloyd Kelly because he wants him to bet him in the squad? He wants him to get his new teammates. He wants to give him that, experience of being a Newcastle United player, but he won't play. Or is he going to feature? Now, Kelly, Willock and Longstaff were left out on Saturday. They didn't travel, but they've all gone to Japan, and it'll be very, very interesting to see whether those 3 feature in the 2 games in the next week.
I hope he's not injured. It'd be so Newcastle United to look that he would be, though, wouldn't it?
It would be, yeah.
And with the season really upon the horizon, you haven't got too much time to bed in. These competitive, well, not competitive, but these preseason games are so important leading up to those first few competitive weeks.
Is that why we're seeing so much of Jamal Lewis? Because Kelly's injured.
Exactly.
So, but that the wider point of it is, he's got Lewis, Hall and Dan Burn at left back at the minute, and potentially Jamal Lewis. He's got Fabian Schär and Kraft at centre back. We've got no Lascelles. You've got no Alex Murphy, who's not going to Japan.
No Botman.
No Lascelles.
Probably no Trippier.
No Trippier at the moment. Well, he's definitely not for Japan.
And we'll get on to Trippier in a moment.
You're running low on defenders there. So, and obviously Lloyd Kelly not being up to speed, it doesn't do anyone any favour.
I tell you what, though, I'm a little bit of a romantic. I would love Jamal Lewis to find his feet at Newcastle.
So would I. I really would, because how excited were we all when he signed for Newcastle? Liverpool tried to sign him. He failed a medical. We should probably have seen it coming down the tracks. He signed for Newcastle, and for whatever reason, it just hasn't worked. I would love him to be the next one on this, on this journey that Eddie Howe improves them. I want him to join the likes of Miggy and Murphy and Joelinton and Schär and all these players. I I would love it, but look, we've been here before, and I don't want to get too excited after a 2-0 win at Hull on the first game of pre-season.
Well, plenty more games to come, and hopefully he can seize the opportunity that's been presented to him. Plenty of youngsters involved against Hull. Jamie Miley started, and there were several who came off the bench. Talk to us about Eddie Howe. Has he been forced to turn to these youngsters because of maybe fitness and injuries in his senior players? He's not one who tends to use them unless he's really, really needed to. And it always seems to be through gritted teeth. So again, is it a case that these youngsters are going to get the chance or are getting the chance to stake a claim in the first team squad? Or is it, again, Eddie Howe just doing what's necessary to get himself and his team through these preseason games?
No, I think it's a bit of both. I think obviously he wants the squad to be big. He wants the youngsters to have a chance. I think he's also probably had his hand twisted a little bit. He's got to take some of these players because of Kelly and all these players being out. Saturday was interesting. We saw Jamie Miley start from the outset, playing centre mid on the right of the midfield three. Looked okay. Didn't see too much of the ball first half. It was an okay performance. I think he'll grow into the team, and it'll be really interesting to see whether he gets minutes in Japan. It'd be really interesting to see whether they send him out on loan this summer, because I feel like a loan deal would probably benefit him. At the moment, we saw Trayvon Sanusi in the second half. He looked really good. Came on for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Every time he got the ball, he wanted to go forward. He was taking his man on. Really, really direct. I really hope to see a bit more of him. He's only 17, but I think he could have a really bright future. We also saw Jay Turner-Cook, who, remember, had a fantastic pre-season last time around before he went on loan to St Johnstone, where it didn't really work out. We also saw a bit of Ben Parkinson and Alfie Harrison. Now, all five that I've just mentioned and Kafal Heffernan, who signed from AC Milan, they've all been taken to Japan. So really, really good to see if they can sort of have a breakthrough somehow. Remember, we've sort of had this pattern the last couple of years. There's always been one standout name from pre-season. It was Matty Bondswell 2 years ago. He had that fantastic game at Benfica. Everyone thought he was going to be, the next left back coming through. He obviously didn't end up getting many first team chances after that, and has now left the club. Alex Murphy was probably the standout last summer. Really, really impressive when they went to America. He hasn't been taken to Japan. He wasn't in the matchday squad last week, but he was in Germany. Eddie Howe earlier this summer, if I've got the quote here, was actually talking about Murphy's future, and he said, my plans for him is that he continues to push and train well and push the players that are in the team. I'm really pleased with his progress, and I think his time training with us, he's really improved. But there will come a time for Alex where he'll need to expose himself to the team, or maybe a loan spell, but that's further in the future. So I think we'll probably see Alex Murphy moved out on loan this summer.
Alongside Grant Kewell, who was there at Hull, didn't get off the bench, isn't in the squad for the Japan trip. Like you said, Alex Murphy isn't either. So what's going on there?
Yeah, look, we all sort of hope that Grant Kewell would use the summer to really kick on. He played in Australia, didn't he, in that postseason trip against the A-League team? I think he might have came off the bench. Yeah, a bit of
niceties.
Yeah, a bit of sponsorship maybe to try and get some tickets sold maybe. Played in Germany, I believe, last week in the second half in the behind closed doors game, and then didn't come off the bench on Saturday. Didn't even warm up on Saturday, which maybe suggests,
I mean, last week you were on the suggestion train that he might be the answer to that third striker.
Well, I had high hopes that he would play on Saturday, get taken to Japan, he'd get some minutes under his belt. We could maybe see a bit more of him than we have done. And for whatever reason, Howe's decided not to take him. Now, again, speaking about Kewell earlier in the summer, he says it's probably going to be another loan spell for him. He's had a couple of loan spells, but I think he really needs the next one to be a successful one. We need to find him more game time. Hopefully that'll happen. 2 really poor loan spells for him. He came with so much fanfare. He was so exciting. He made the Australia World Cup squad in Qatar. Everyone thought Dan Ashworth pulled off an absolute blinder. They sent him to Hearts, where there was 4 Australian players. They thought that was the best place to send him, and it hasn't worked out there, and it didn't work out with Volendam in the Netherlands last season. So wherever he goes this summer, it needs to be it needs to be a successful loan spell, as Eddie Howe says.
Well, we've had quite a few questions sent in over email, and I'll remind you guys of the email address again, the EIBWpodcast@reachplc.com. And one of them is from Rachel in Cramilton, and she wrote in to say, "Hi guys, love the show, and here's hoping for a successful season to come. My question is about loan deals. How important is it that the likes of Murphy or Kewell get the right move this summer? We've seen some stinkers in recent years."
Yeah, look, a lot of pressure on Shola to get them right this time because new setup now with Paul Mitchell. There's no Dan Ashworth. He'll need to strike up a really good relationship with Mitchell. And, how often have we actually seen loan deals work for Newcastle in recent years? Minter. Apart from that, there's been very few.
Well, even that didn't start well.
Yeah,
did it?
It ended very well. It didn't start well. You're right to say that. Huge for Kewell. I mean, look, clearly, he hasn't been taken to Japan for whatever reason. It doesn't look like he's got a short-term future at Newcastle, which is a shame. But we also can't sit here in good faith and say that he should, on what we've seen so far, be in this first team. So get him a good loan deal, get him minutes. We don't want him sat on the bench. Get him a decent level, and hopefully he can try and find a bit of form, regain that confidence, and show the player that he was before he left Australia.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because you look at where players of his age tend to go. Okay, some go abroad to maybe Holland, but you feel like they have to have real quality there to nail down a first-team place like Minter has, as much as it pains us to say. So, or they go to lower leagues like a League One or League Two. But there, even as a youngster, you have to have a bit of muscle about you because it's tough. You'll get kicked from pillar to post. Elliot Anderson handled it quite well. Sean Longstaff did. But, if you've got the quality, then that kind of makes up maybe for a bit of the lack of the strength. But, you need a bit of both. Could you really see Kewell going down to a League One, League Two and handling it? Because he doesn't look like he's built in the right kind of frame for it. And I do wonder whether it's going to be a little bit harder to put him in the right environment for him to flourish.
I think he needs that confidence back. When he was in Australia before he joined Newcastle, and when he was in the Australia team, he looked like a player that was just so confident on the ball. He looked like a really tricky, fast, confident attacking player. And every time, the very few times we've seen him in the Newcastle shirt, the odd time that we saw him for Volendam, he just looks like a player.
Right,
he just looks like he looks lost.
Yeah.
Just looks like he's never played in an attacking position in his life. And it's such a shame for such a young kid to be ground down like that. And I think he just needed to fall right for him. He just needs a manager that's going to say, right, we're going to get the best out of you. We're going to find a way to fit you into this system. Didn't work out at Hearts. There was a change in management. Stephen Naismith, the Hearts manager at the time, said, he just couldn't find a way to fit him into the team. Volendam last year, I think, got relegated from the Eredivisie. For whatever reason, the two loan deals just weren't right for him. So that's why it's so crucial that he gets a good spell this time. Alex Murphy, I think I could see going down to League One or Championship, and he looks like he's got the potential to actually do quite well.
That's it. He
level.
looks like he's
got something. He's played in the Premier League already. He's trained with Newcastle's first team a lot. He's played a lot in friendly games, and he looks comfortable. I don't think you'd find too many viewers or listeners that would be disappointed if Alex Murphy was actually in the squad this summer. I know he's not probably going to be, but I think he's shown enough so far that there's clearly something there.
I 100% agree with you. If he was included in the squad for the season to come, I agree. I don't think many people would turn their noses up at that, but he does need to go out and get first team football to aid his development. If we look at the squad heading to Japan, then as you mentioned, Tonali is in there. Maybe a big surprise to some, but then again, maybe not, as Newcastle and Howe have done their best to keep him fully integrated in the squad despite not being able to play. What benefit does he get by going out to Japan?
Look, massively. I think it makes him feel part of the team. As you say, it'll do, a lot of good for the bonding. I think, obviously, he can't play in the two games, but I think it'll be good just for him to have that feel again. I think it's better having him there than obviously leaving him at home. And by all accounts, he's training fantastically well. He will drive the others. He'll drive the youngsters. He'll be a lot of help for the likes of Jamie Miley playing in the same position and learning off him. It's a shame that he can't play the two games. I would love to see him, but what's it now? Less than a month till he's officially back. So we're getting close, aren't we?
Bruno finally meets up with his teammates in Japan, but no Trippier, no Gordon. We knew about that because of their involvement in the Euros. We'll talk about Kieran Trippier because it's fair to say that his social media has created a bit of a storm over the weekend. He was spotted flying out to Dubai. Then he posted a picture of him with Tom Spring, who was head of scouting for Al Attifaq, the side that Steven Gerrard manages in Saudi Arabia. The image on Instagram came with a caption which read, "Good meeting." This comes after months of intense speculation over his future. Thoughts on that post, Aaron?
Well, I'll let you into a little secret. I'll let you into a little behind-the-scenes access of what I was thinking about Friday. I already had the Monday show in my head, and I was thinking about how I was going to come on the show and say, look, I know you might get 10 million for him. I know that he's fell off a little bit with his performances, but you've got to keep Kieran Trippier at the club. It's the right thing to do. You can't replace his leadership for 10 million. And then he dropped that post on over the weekend, and I just thought, why on earth have you done that? Why have you done that? Because he knows exactly what sort of reaction that's going to drum up. One, because of who he's with and the fact he's tagged him. Two, because of the caption. And three, he knows Newcastle United fans are going to jump on that. I can't understand why he's done it.
Bad judgment, isn't it?
My only theory, and this is a theory, it's nothing more than that, is that has he read on social media? Has he heard on podcasts? Has he got the general vibe in the last 6 months that Newcastle fans have came round to the idea of him going? And has he taken that as an affront of, look, I've given you everything. I've been your vice captain. I've taken you to Wembley. I've taken you to the Champions League, and I've had 6 months of poor form, and you're ready to cash in on us.
But that's a massive gamble, because it's by no means the majority of Newcastle United fans willing to cash in on him.
But it's a lot. But it's a lot though. I think if you'd rewind to this time last summer, everyone was talking about Kieran Trippier finishing his career at Newcastle United, getting a coaching spot. He was the man that was going to win them their first trophy. Tino's had a fantastic first season at the club. Some may say that he's going to be the first choice right back this time next month. I mean, he probably definitely is now, because we don't even know if Kieran Trippier is going to be there. And again, it's a theory, but is Kieran Trippier sat there thinking, you know what, I owe you nothing now, and you've thrown me under the bus. I'm gonna.
Even if that's the case,
I don't know.
Do something like that, because as you say, he knows exactly the reaction that's going to get.
It was a really bad post. It really left a bad taste in my mouth when he put it up. There was no need for him to do that.
Yeah, it sours the relationship, because if he goes this summer, I mean, look, that post isn't going to destroy his so-called legacy. We'll call it a legacy in Newcastle, because he has done enough. As you say, he was the catalyst to the beginning of that new era. But it does dent it a little bit, and it is a massive shame. It is a massive shame for everything he's done. As you say, just a really bad bit of judgment from Kieran Trippier. But I think Newcastle United should have cashed in January. I said it back then, and I think if you can get anything towards £10 million, and this is even before the post went out on Instagram, I would be cashing in.
I wouldn't.
I think they've got enough there to get them through to next summer, and then you buy someone who can compete with Tino Livramento. I mean,
so you think they've got enough in behind with Emil Kraft and potentially Harrison Ashby?
Yeah, and I know it's. Look, I know. Listen, I know
Harrison Ashby is the second choice right back.
I know. Well, no, third choice. I know that's not going to please everyone listening.
So Kraft is the second choice right back.
But listen, right? There's clearly an issue with how much Newcastle have got to spend, as we'll get to with some of Eddie Howe's comments after that whole game. It's not an endless pot. They've got priorities in this team where they're going to have to spend big. Right winger, centre back, then a striker. They're going to have to play clever elsewhere. If you can cash in on Kieran Trippier, where you will have to
not replace him.
Listen, and you'll have to lose him on a free. You'll have to lose him on a free in the summer, next summer.
Worth it,
right? You get him off the pay. You get him off the wage bill now. You get 10 million in, and you say, look, it's not an ideal situation, but if Tino Livramento can stay fit, Emil Kraft, we're there. Emil Kraft, I will go to the comments in a second. Emil Kraft has shown that he can do it in the Premier League.
Oh, must.
If Harrison Ashby can find his feet, right? If yeah, it's all ifs and buts. But listen, what's the alternative? You keep Kieran Trippier, who's not going to be happy playing second fiddle to Tino Livramento, who was clearly shown there in an error of judgment that maybe he's ready to rock the boat in the dressing room. That's not going to please anybody. What's the alternative? How would you keep Kieran Trippier happy if he's second choice? Well, before you read them comments, answer that question.
What's the question?
How do you keep Kieran Trippier happy if he's second choice to Tino Livramento?
Kieran Trippier, I know you've had your prediction and you're hoping it's come true. I think if Kieran Trippier, I think Kieran Trippier is going to go. I don't want him to. Let's just say he wasn't going to go. I think Kieran Trippier starts the season as Howe's first choice right back. He's the vice captain. And I think he has a really good battle with Tino Livramento for that spot next year. And I think he'd be happy enough doing that. Now, look, I don't think that's going to happen because I think he's got his heart set on going. Kieran Trippier, for all the points you've just made, Kieran Trippier needs to stay. They've got so many priorities elsewhere that they need to strengthen. Centre-back, right midfield, up front. If Kieran Trippier goes, you've got to replace him. Because if Tino Livramento gets injured, which will happen at some point because he can't stay fit.
Kieran Trippier's injury record isn't exactly fantastic.
You are stuck with Emil Kraft as the first choice right back for a team that wants to go to the Champions League. Now, I like Emil Kraft, but he's a squad player as a centre-back at the minute. If Kieran Trippier goes, you've got to replace him. And I think for the money you're going to get for him, yes, you're going to get his wages off the books. You're not going to find someone as consistent and who has the leadership qualities of Kieran Trippier for 10 million. I just want to dive into comments here because they're going to back up my points. To coin a phrase, Tino will be injured after 3 games. If we aren't careful, we will end up with Kraft. Massively agree. Thank you, Leslie, that we can't replace his leadership for 10 million. Slothy says Tino's definitely not going to play 38 games.
But how many games did Kieran Trippier play last season? Because people are talking about Tino Livramento's injury record. So he played 28 games
here's a
last
suggestion
season.
from Slothy in the comments. Jacob Murphy, right back.
Well, Eddie Howe's used him before. It depends if they want to use a more wing-back
keep
situation.
Keep Miggy as a right midfielder. I think sign someone.
You've got enough to get through without Kieran Trippier. It's not your perfect scenario.
I just can't. I can't believe yours. If you want to sell Trippier, fine. I think they should keep him, but I think he's going to go. But if you sell him, you've got to replace him with someone. Harrison Ashby, I don't think will make that 25-man squad.
And there's a strong chance he might not, and that obviously changes things. But I think if you can get Trippier's wage off the wage bill, that will then give you enough scope to go in and maybe find someone to compete with Tino Livramento. Yes, it'll be someone younger. Yes, someone less experienced. But I don't think Kieran Trippier is Newcastle United's number 1 anymore.
And look, I think a lot of people will agree with you. Tino's done enough to be number 1 in a lot of people's eyes. But I think they're so short in that position.
He will not be happy. Kieran Trippier will not be happy playing second fiddle to Tino Livramento. He's going to want.
There's absolutely nothing to say that he would, though. I don't think if Kieran Trippier stays, he'll be number 2. I think he'll be number 1.
I disagree with you.
But I sort of think that this argument's a little bit pointless about him starting because I don't think he's going to be there. I think it's the worst kept secret in the world that he's going to Saudi. I think that post on Saturday proves it. And I hate to say it, but he's really gone down in my estimations for doing that. If he is going to Saudi Arabia and if he signs for Al Ettifaq, I'll be so annoyed. If he signs for another Saudi club, I won't be as annoyed. But I think in an ideal world, I think you keep Kieran Trippier. I really don't like the thought of him going. And I think if he goes, you have got to replace him with someone who can play second fiddle to Tino, who's better than Kraft and who's better than Ashley.
But are you keeping him at Newcastle United because of the options who Newcastle United have got to play second fiddle to Livramento?
No, because I think he's still got a lot to offer Newcastle United. He's one of the best. He has just played every game, bar 1 in the Euros for England, bar the final. Out of position, granted, but he played every single game for Southgate. He's not a busted flush. Yes, his performances have dipped a little. He had a lot of dips in form. He couldn't stay fit.
I think
there's still a player there.
The end of last season, and I think large parts of last season, you saw that his age is catching up with him. I'm sorry, you did. And I think it'll only get worse in the season to come. Fantastic leader. There's no doubt about it. His experience, vice captain, as you say, is so valuable to Newcastle United. But that doesn't cover the fact that he's getting older. He's lacking pace.
Is he good enough to be Newcastle's second choice right back?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
But
he's good enough to be that first choice right back as well. He is.
Livramento is Newcastle United's first choice right back. Why not?
Well, no. Look, I'm not. I don't take. I'm not massively disagreeing with that. I think a lot of people will agree that Tino is in a better vein of form, in a better position to be Newcastle's first choice right back. But I just think if you do sell Trippier, which I think is going to happen, you've got to replace him. But I would like to keep him. But look, I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's away. But I think it's a shame. Mm. And also, can I just ask on a separate point? And I've seen this question asked a lot on Twitter. If or when Trippier goes, who gets the captaincy?
Well, that is a good point, isn't it? Dan Burn had it against Hull.
Bruno.
Then will Dan Burn even be in the first team? I'd give it to Joe Linton.
Joe Linton, yeah. Bruno. I've seen a lot of people saying Bruno. I think that would probably be my shout.
There's options there.
There's options. Longstaff could take it as well. If he's starting. share. We've got a lot of options there, to be fair. A lot of options.
We've got Slothy Vlog saying, forgot about Kraft. He's not good enough. Nathana says, Tina looks so fragile. Just the way he plays, I'm so afraid he's going to get injured any time. Slothy adds, Ashby isn't up to standard either. Got Leslie Chu saying, Trippier and Livramento would both elevate each other this season. Still offers much more than any
Leslie's making some great points in the comments.
Fair enough. Okay, maybe my suggestion of selling them hasn't gone down too well. I love the fact you used gone down my estimation. I was expecting a bit more of the Kevin Keegan right to come up for that when you do things like that.
No, it was really, really surprising to see him do that. And look, for all accounts, by the way, I just want to say I do think Kieran Trippier is actually friends with what was his name, Tom Spring. I do think they've got a friendship there. He's a British lad working in Saudi. I'm pretty sure he's been friends with Trippier in a while. It might be all innocent, but Kieran Trippier knows how that looks.
That's funny.
You link with Saudi all summer, and then you post a photo saying good meeting with the head of scouting at a Saudi club.
I always said if I was a professional footballer, on transfer deadline day, I would purposely just like drive past an airport, like walk through the
little photo, little timer emoji.
Just mess with everybody's mind, like especially the press as well, especially us guys. Like, he's spotted at the airport, because you'd have to report that he's spotted at an airport and he's just doing it for, the fun of it. We've got Sean here saying Trips was responsible for 3 losses last season. Mistakes are creeping in. I think it's time to get cash while it's on the table. He's a man who knows what it's all about, doesn't it? No, right, okay. Well, we'll agree to disagree on that one. What else are we talking about? Because there is still a little bit to talk about. I think next we're going to talk about Newcastle's lack of transfers.
Do we have to?
I think we have to, don't we? Right. Well, actually, what we'll do first off, because there have been reports that Howe wants to keep Kieran Trippier, and he would also prefer to keep Callum Wilson, and hinted that he'd be happy to keep Almiron. Thoughts on that?
Look, I saw a lot being made over the weekend of the Almiron quotes, because he was asked about Almiron specifically against Hull. Look, I think he can't really say anything else, can he?
I wouldn't expect him to say anything else.
What can he really say when he's asked about Miguel Almiron, apart from I love him, I love working with him? He stopped short of saying I want to keep him. I think he stopped short of saying we're gonna keep him. He talks very complimentary about him. But I generally think, look, fans might not like to hear it, but I generally do think Eddie Howe really rates, respects, and admires and likes Miguel Almiron. And I think he really sees a player there. Yes, he's frustrated at times, but he's given Newcastle a lot over the last couple of seasons. Admittedly, not so much last season, but certainly when they qualified for the Champions League.
You've got the quotes there. Do you want me to read them out?
I don't have them, so if you've got them up.
Miggy's been unbelievable for Newcastle long before I came, but also since I've been here. He's been absolutely pivotal. Key player. We love him. We love his personality. We love working with him. He's come back with a big smile on his face, so I'm looking forward to working with him again. So as you said, didn't say he's staying, didn't say I want him to stay, but he said everything else you expect.
Can he? Yeah. I think that's fair. Those are fair comments from him.
But we have had quite a few questions this week, all about the subject of loyalty, and essentially the questions have all asked the question about Eddie Howe and if his loyalty to certain players, Callum Wilson, Kieran Trippier and Miguel Almiron specifically, will end up costing him in the long run.
It was quite a running theme last year, wasn't it? The loyalty to Miggy out wide, the loyalty to Dan Burn at left back when maybe they weren't going through the best periods of form. It's been quite a running theme. I don't think it's anything new. Will it end up costing them?
Ring that buzzer. He's about to sit on the fence, ladies and gents.
6 weeks ago, I would have said no, probably not. But I think now Paul Mitchell's in. I don't know whether the dynamics change. I don't know whether Howe is going to have the ability to stay loyal to these players if Paul Mitchell and Darren Eales and everyone else behind the scenes says, look, we need to get these players out. Look, Paul Mitchell's not going to pick the team. Eddie Howe could still be loyal to Miguel Almiron first game of the season by starting him Southampton if they don't have anyone else in. But just on that, by the way, Jacob Murphy on the match on Saturday. Really, he's
looking very lean,
he's looking
quick,
very good.
sharp.
And he's just carrying on the form that we saw at the end of the season. But back to the point, will it cost them? I think fans think it will cost them. I don't think it will.
Because we don't know what's going on behind closed doors. He's obviously saying all this.
And look,
hype
yeah,
about
but what
Almiron.
else is Howe meant to say
Yeah,
when he's asked
exactly.
about him? He's not going to come out and say, yeah, we want to sell him.
I mean, I guess we'll only know when the window shuts.
Exactly.
And if Almiron's still, Trippier's still, then.
If Miguel Almiron is the first choice right winger on the 1st of September, then we'll know that Eddie Howe, is potentially in trouble with being too loyal. But
we've got an email here from Alfie who says, "Hi Andrew and Aaron, thanks for the show. If Newcastle United start the season with Miguel Almiron on the right side of midfield, despite a real need to upgrade, would you deem the window a failure?" I mean, I guess the season starts a few weeks before the window closes, but would that be deemed a failure?
Yeah, I think so. I think.
Are we talking?
It's not just this window. We've been talking about an upgrade right winger. We've been talking about an upgrade at right wing since the takeover 3 years ago.
Starting 11 against Southampton, Almiron plays at right wing. Are you concerned? Or you say it's a few weeks till the window shuts? Let's see what happens.
If he starts against Southampton, it's not ideal. I still think Murphy would probably get the nod. If he starts 1st of September against Spurs, and the window's closed and it's him and Murphy battling it out again, I'll be not concerned, but I'll be disappointed, really, really disappointed that they've had the full summer to get their priority position and they haven't done it.
Nathana says Miggy Haskell, probably the only player that has a high sell-on value besides our important players. Totally agree with you on that one. I just want to also ask you the question that I asked you 7 days ago and then 7 days ago before that, to sound that buzzer, because it is, are you concerned that Newcastle United have not added to the squad?
What did I say? I said no last week, didn't I? I said I wasn't concerned. I feel like last week I was probably on a 5 out of 10 in concern. Now I think I've probably jumped up to a 6.5. 6.5 because I think we should probably read Eddie Howe's quote when he was asked about transfers on Saturday, and he says a lot has been made of what I said last week when he obviously talked about the control and Mitchell, but we're working normally as we would do towards the new season. I can't say that my week is any different in terms of getting players in. He said we all want players in now, but it's a very slow market, a difficult market. Prices are high. All we can do is do our best to get players in. Now, Paul Mitchell is in Japan with the team to work on transfers with Howe. We can't be sat here next week with no new signings, can we?
We said that last week.
Well, we can.
And the week before.
But I'm pretty sure I made the prediction that they would have signed a player by this week, and they haven't. Look, I don't think Newcastle are alone. I think the market in general this summer, and I think it's a knock-on effect of what happened in January in PSR. Clubs don't really want to spend. Clubs aren't really going out and spending at will like we've seen before. We know that Newcastle don't have this bottomless pit. We know that money's probably tight, which is another reason you need to keep Kieran Trippier, so you don't need to replace him. But we know they need a right winger. We know they need a centre-back. I'm sick of saying it, but we also know that they need a striker. They need those three in. And whatever else happens, I'm not too fussed as long as they get those three upgraded. And they've got a month. They've got a month to do it. Come on. Positivity.
Of course, we're having discussions every day, Eddie Howe added several times to try and move the squad forward and make sure we're ready for what is a very tough Premier League season. But I can't give you false news. We're working towards that and everybody wants the same endpoint. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens indeed.
Yeah, he said nothing. Said nothing's close when asked on Saturday.
I mean, one man that Newcastle do have an interest in, although the Twitter/X in the nose have jumped the gun slightly and been shut down by his agent this morning, is Malick Thiaw, of course, of AC Milan, centre-back. Aaron, just explain what happened here.
Yeah, so look, this is a player that Newcastle United are interested in. 22-year-old German international, played 30 times in all competitions last season, including against Newcastle in the Champions League, where he kept a clean sheet. Very, very highly rated right centre-back who would initially come in as very stern competition for Fabian Schär, and then eventually would hopefully be the partner long-term for Sven Botman. AC Milan, according to reports in Italy, open to selling him for anywhere between 30 and 40 million euros. Newcastle want it to be the lower end, AC Milan want it to be the higher end. Unconfirmed reports and pretty much Twitter speculation on Monday morning suggested that terms had been agreed between the player. The agent came out a couple of hours later, speaking to Sky Germany and saying The current reporting about my client in connection with a possible transfer to Newcastle is false and incorrect. Therefore, I will not comment on any further rumours. So just to clarify, that is the agent saying that no terms have been agreed. Newcastle are interested in him. AC Milan are also closing in on a deal to sign Salzburg centre-back Strahinja Pavlovic. Very young centre-back, going to come in for around 20 million euros. He is expected to be the man that will replace Thiaw and partner Tomori at centre-back, which would essentially give the green light for Thiaw to leave. Thiaw earlier in the summer was linked to Bayern and Madrid in the press, and he came out and said, "It's a part of football, this speculation. My focus is simply on Milan next season. I simply want to do better and improve myself." But that Sky Germany reporter who spoke to the agent today said that he is open to leaving AC Milan.
And Newcastle United very much interested. So one to watch, and interestingly that the agent didn't come out and say he's not interested in move to Newcastle United, which would have been very bad for Paul Mitchell and the like to hear, but he didn't shut that move down. I mean, just give us a little bit of insight, Aaron, into the world of Twitter and X, and because there's a lot of accounts that claim to know the ins and outs of Newcastle United, and just how difficult it makes your job as Newcastle United editor and the rest of the team's job to get a concrete verdict on what is real and what is not.
It does blur the lines a lot because, for example, today, and look, I don't want to talk down on anybody else or anyone else in the profession, but there is sometimes a lot of people who are just doing it for Twitter likes and retweets and follows and a bit of clout, who come out and say that terms are agreed or the deal's being done, and as if they've got this big information. It then leads us at the Chronicle to try and actually find out whether it's true, to see whether it's real or not. And obviously today, for example, it was the agent who came out and said no, that is not the case. It also gets Newcastle United fans' hopes up when they're just going to be dashed a couple of hours later. So I think I speak for a lot of people in the profession that will just breathe a sigh of relief on the 1st of September when that window slams shut and we can just have a couple of months of quiet again.
Quiet. Do you get the impression that everything has been sorted with Eddie Howe's frustrations? He was asked after the whole game about having the final decision on transfers, and he said it's not about having the final say, it's about collaboration. Things have been really positive with talks, and we're trying to bring in the right players for the football club. It's never about one person's decision, and neither should it be. It's about a group of people coming together and making the right decisions for the football club.
Yeah, look, I took a little bit. It's probably the only thing I took positivity from Howe's comments on Saturday. It does seem like any issues that he might have had have been ironed out. Just like I was saying last Monday, good to get it out there, get ahead of it, and put a bit of pressure on the board. It does seem like everyone's pulling in the same direction. Paul Mitchell was out in Germany. Paul Mitchell has also gone to Japan. It does seem like they're all working together to try and get some incomings done. And Eddie Howe, as I've just said in the quote that I read out about 10 minutes ago, he says that his job hasn't really changed. He's still working every day to not only coach the players, but to have a big say on who they bring in. And hopefully, this time next week, I'm going to say it again. I know I said it last week. They're going to have a player through the door.
Will he be getting frustrated at this point?
I'd imagine so. Look, we've spent the last couple of weeks on this pod and in videos talking about how they need someone in before Japan, and now they're flying off to Japan. And they nearly didn't have Lloyd Kelly on that flight, never mind any fresh faces. So there will be frustration from Eddie Howe. I think he got that from his quote on Saturday. He got that definitely from his quote in Germany 7 days earlier. There will be massive frustration, but I think he will also, it's clear that him and Mitchell are working together behind the scenes to get something done. They've got plenty of time. They've still got a month. I'm confident that they'll get something done. I'm sure they are.
But ideally, you'd want them in for this big pre-season tour of Japan, wouldn't you?
And look, they did very well to get Lloyd Kelly in so early. They obviously got 2 goalkeepers in as backups very early.
Because imagine how much more you'd be looking forward to the season kicking off against Southampton in what is it, 2 weeks' time?
Yeah, 2.5 weeks.
With a big money signing through the door. And the club will know that.
They will know that. And look, we've spent the last couple of weeks saying they need a lift, don't they? They missed out on Europe. They lost Ashraf Stave. He's gone. They just need something tangible to hold on to. And so far, they haven't really had that with any of the links. Obviously, Malick Thiaw from AC Milan does look like it's the closest that we've seen in a long while.
There we go. Harmeet's in. Yeah. There you go. Plenty of time. He's laughing at you.
Plenty of time.
I think he's been sarcastic towards you.
There is plenty of time. There's a month left.
Okay, we'll come back in 7 days' time and ask you the question again.
Yeah, and my concern, I've just creeped closer to 10 out of 10, I think.
Next Monday, we'll have signed someone?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got to be positive. I've got to keep this positive mindset.
Sure.
Speak it into existence.
I'm sure Harmeet would call it something else. We've got a question here from Howard in Gateshead. He says, just wondering what you think are the priorities for Newcastle in the transfer window. While a lot of people mention the striker and right wing positions, I think it's vital that we go and get a quality right side centre back. I would push the boat out and go for Tonali at EC Milan. English international, strong, quick, can play both right and left side and loves to defend. In the 2 Champions League games against us last season, he completely dominated Alexander Isak. While Fabian Schär is a fine player, he's not getting any younger and lacks pace. If he were to get injured, we are in massive trouble. Your thoughts?
Look, I agree with most of that. I don't think anyone would turn their nose up at Tomori. I think he's going to cost you a lot of money than his defensive partner that Newcastle are currently looking at. But I think for everything that sorry, what's his name?
Howard.
I think everything that Howard said there is pretty much spot on. If Fabian Schär gets injured, then, well, I mean, you'll be all right because they've got Emil Kraft there, and obviously he's good enough to be second choice. But they need a centre back. No, it's not hate. It's just I know his levels. I know his limits.
All right. Says the professional footballer.
But yeah, look, I think they do need a centre back. It's one of the 3 positions that they need to strengthen.
We've got Daniel getting in touch, and he asks, Eddie Howe's comments on Callum Wilson seems to him not to understand the gamble of going into the new season with just Wilson and Isak. Is Howe protecting Wilson, or does he genuinely want him to stay and isn't that concerned about his injury record?
Look, I don't think you can say Howe won't be concerned about his injury record. I think anybody with any understanding of football would be, concerned with his injury record. But I also think Howe knows what Wilson can do when he's fit. He's also spoken publicly many times about how much it would cost to keep Callum Wilson, and I think Howe knows that having him in the squad for half a season, for a bit more, if you can get a little bit out of him, is better than selling him. Now, look, another injury, a big setback. We've now had it confirmed that he's not going to be playing the opener at Southampton. It's what we've been saying the last couple of weeks. It just sort of chips away at that confidence that you've got about Callum Wilson, or that desire that you want him to stay. But again, it's like Miggy. What else can he really say? He can't come out and say, "Look, Callum Wilson injury record, shock him. We want rid of him. He's a liability." He can't say that. And he's worked with him for so many years at both Bournemouth and Newcastle. He really rates him, really respects him. I'm not going to waste any energy getting annoyed because Howe's saying he likes Callum Wilson. I can't understand why people would do that.
Behind closed doors, will he be saying?
I think he's saying to Paul Mitchell, "We need another striker in ASAP."
As you're saying, time to cash in. He said on the record, Callum had an injection in his back. Without going into too much detail on the injury, I think it was a bulge in his disc which needed treatment, so he had an operation. I think he may miss the start of the season, but thankfully there are not too many games at the start where week to week, so hopefully he won't miss too many. Just that last quote didn't fill me with a lot of confidence.
What's your thoughts on Callum Wilson?
You sell him if you can get a bid, but where the bid's going to come from, he has to hope that Kieran Trippier can put a good word in for him over in the Middle East.
So I'm just correct me if I'm wrong. You're advocating Trippier, Wilson, and Miggy all going this summer.
If the right bids come in, and that's easier said than done. But the way I look at it, you've got both. I'm not sure about Miggy's contract, but you've got Wilson and Trippier out of contract.
Miggy's 2026.
Okay, so you've got 2 of them out of contract in this next summer. If you can raise £20 million in sales, maybe a little bit more, and there'll be 2 of the higher earners in the club, then it makes sense. If A, one's not first choice, and B, one's going to play all of 20 games this season. Now, it's going to be a lot harder to sell Callum Wilson than it is Kieran Trippier because of that injury record. But if a bid comes in 10, 12, 15 million for Callum Wilson, if it was me making them decisions, I would cash in. Or the other alternative is you get James Bunce to try and work his magic, and you somehow go and find either a right winger who can fill in as a third striker, or you go and find a youngster. We've discussed it before. Either option's not going to be ideal. A youngster, whoever's going to be, is still going to be expensive. Right winger, you buy him because you want him to play right wing. You don't want to have to turn to him come November, December when Wilson's injured. Isak's got a cold, and you say you're going to have to play up top. You just don't want to do that. So there's not an ideal solution here.
I think just on the topic of selling Trippier, Wilson, and Miggy, that is just so anti-Eddie Howe in the sense that you would, let's just say all three went, take away the fact whether it's the right deal because the money was right or whatever. Losing Trippier, Wilson, and Miggy in the same season, Eddie Howe will be looking at that and thinking, I've lost three very key senior players. Now, this is where Paul Mitchell comes in. And Eddie Howe's level of control, we don't know how much it's going to be. Does Paul Mitchell come in and say, look, I know you want to keep Miguel Almiron because you really rate him and you want him as a squad player, but we've got to sell him because the money's right. I know you really want to keep Callum Wilson because you like him and you respect him, and when he's fit, he scores goals. We've got a really good offer on the table and we can go out and sign a replacement. This is where it's going to boil down to him. But I just think on that, and I'm not saying I want to keep all three, but I think I've been leaning more towards that than you are, and a lot of other people are. Eddie Howe will not want to lose all three this summer, and I think that's why he's coming out and publicly saying so.
I agree, he would.
Be a huge change to the dressing room. And Eddie Howe, in the 3 years that we've seen him be here, does not like big sweeping overhauls of that dressing room. And this is where we might see it change for the first time.
We've got the Bassman saying selling Trips, Miggy, and Wilson is insane. You cannot get a top class striker for less than 60 million.
You're losing a lot of. I know it's the popular opinion among fans. I know it's the general consensus, but you're losing a lot of experience. You're losing first team players, and you're losing them for not a lot of money. In the case of Kieran Trippier and Wilson, they're going to cost a lot of money to replace.
And you've lost Richie and Dummett. Says to coin a phrase.
You're also potentially going to lose Jamal Lewis. I know he's obviously not out of contract, but he's not fit. He might not even make a 25-man squad. You're going to lose a lot.
If it was down to me and you were making me sell two and keep one, I would keep Miguel Almiron. Even though I think you'd get the more money for him, but I think he has a bigger chance of affecting the season in a positive manner than Wilson or Trippier does.
Yeah. I would disagree on Trippier. I would agree on Wilson. I think my three in order would go keep Kieran Trippier first, then keep Almiron, then keep Callum Wilson.
But again, the point being, we could pick a number out the essay if someone came in 25 million for Miguel Almiron, 15 for Callum Wilson, and then 12 for Kieran Trippier. In the world where pennies matter, you could do the numbers right, and you could spread the cost of replacements over so many years. You've got the wage bills reduced. At some point, tough decisions are going to be made. At some point, you're going to have to make a tough decision on Dan Burn, on Jacob Murphy, where you have to say goodbye to the old guard.
Sean Longstaff.
Exactly. This is going to have to happen. That's what Eddie Howe's going to have to face at some point. Pope. So I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that he's faced with a decision this summer where he does have to sell someone.
This is what I mean. Eddie Howe has so far been quite blessed to cruise through his Newcastle United journey without having to sell any big players. Look at the players they've sold in the last couple of windows. Alan St. Maximum, you can get over that. Chris Wood, John Joe Shelby. They're yet to have big exits. Now, Miguel Almiron, Kieran Trippier, or Callum Wilson would be the biggest exit I think we've seen under Howe. People might say Maxi was bigger. Maybe. But this is what I mean. Are we now going to see this summer, for the first time, Eddie Howe lose players that he doesn't want to lose? Whether that's for PSR, whether that's because the player himself wants to go, or Paul Mitchell says, look, we need to overhaul this squad.
It's all gone very quiet though on exits, hasn't it? We're talking about how quiet it is on arrivals. It's very quiet on exits.
Well, I think Wilson's injury doesn't help. I think any interest in him will have diminished significantly. Miguel Almiron, we know that the interest significantly has came from Saudi Arabia, but there hasn't really been any offers made. It's just, interest, background interest. Kieran Trippier is the most likely to go, and that's, the interest's coming from him in his own Instagram stories. So still fuming at that. I'm sorry, but
I can tell we can't sign one player, so we're not replacing those three lads. We've got Dave from Greenside who's written to say, hi Andrew and Aaron, keep up the good work. We know Newcastle want to sign a right midfielder, and they've been linked to the same 3 or 4 names over and over again. Do you think it'll be one of those named, or someone totally out of the blue?
I wouldn't be surprised if it was someone totally left field. It feels like we've gone through such a cycle of names, haven't we? We've gone through Nico Gonzalez, Federico Chiesa, Anthony Elanga, Noni Madueke from Chelsea, Jared Bowen, Pedro Neto, Brian Mbeumo, Michael Elise, Serge Gnabry. That's just off the top of my head. All these players, whether it was concrete or tentative or Twitter nonsense, those are being linked to Newcastle in some form. I wouldn't be surprised if it was someone completely left field. because we've seen them do it in the past where these deals just emerge out of nowhere. Obviously, that was under Ashworth. We don't know if it'll be the same sort of, play out the same under on Paul Mitchell. But I wouldn't be surprised if we just see someone come out of the blue, and I hope we do. Today, please. This afternoon, please. Someone out of the blue, someone we've never heard of. Get them done. Get them in.
There we go. So, final question then, Aaron. This time next week, we press go live at 1 p.m, 1:30.
And we can introduce the show, Newcastle United. We'll get the streamers out that we've been waiting to. I don't think we can actually use them in here because of health and safety, but we'll just do it anyway. We'll just do it. We'll get the party streamers out. I'll bring a cake in because Newcastle United will have signed a player.
So there we go. Right. There we go. Aaron Stokes, big prediction. 7 days' time, Newcastle United will have signed
Let's
one.
just disregard. Yeah, come on. It's not push for luck. Don't get greedy. Let's disregard the fact that I sat here last week and said I thought they'd have someone in. They've got to have someone in this time next week.
They've got to have.
They've got to have someone to unveil at the Salah Cup. I'm sorry, but they've got to. We thought they'd have someone to unveil in Japan, but
like I said right at the start, we might see how Alan Shearer unveiling. He signed for Newcastle United, then headed on a plane out to the Middle East. Back in 1996, you were born.
I was
just born.
Month. No.
August.
I think I was born the month after.
Oh, there you go.
Shearer signed, I think. Oh, he signed in August.
I think he signed in August.
It was the birth of my month.
There you go. But we will see what happens. Thank you very much for tuning in. This has been the Monday Show via the Everything is Black and White podcast. Do give the video a thumbs up on YouTube. If you're on the audio channel, leave us a rating and a review. Appreciate it as always. And for myself and Aaron, we'll be back on Monday.